Welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana. Welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today,
So she used to tell him, Baruch, Zoganigen, not Zinganigen, but the Chassidim say Zoganigen.
The Rebbetzin was a very caring person. When I came to New York, I didn't have the chance to sleep by her because the woman who took over refused to leave. She never took a day off. She loved the Rebbe, she loved the Rebbetzin, and she would not take a day off.
So she used to tell him, Baruch, Zoganigen, not Zinganigen, but the Chassidim say Zoganigen.
Take a little walk. The Rebbetzin was a very caring person. When I came to New York, I didn't have the chance to sleep by her because the woman who took over refused to leave. She never took a day off. She loved the Rebbe, she loved the Rebbetzin, and she would not take a day off.
So she used to tell him, Baruch, Zoganigen, not Zinganigen, but the Chassidim say Zoganigen.
The Rebbetzin was a very caring person. When I came to New York, I didn't have the chance to sleep by her because the woman who took over refused to leave. She never took a day off. She loved the Rebbe, she loved the Rebbetzin, and she would not take a day off.
So she used to tell him, Baruch, Zoganigen, not Zinganigen, but the Chassidim say Zoganigen.
The Rebbetzin was a very caring person. When I came to New York, I didn't have the chance to sleep by her.
Welcome to the special broadcast in honor of Vov Tishrei, the yahrzeit of Eim HaMalchus, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbetzin Chana, brought to you by Mochen Chana. Today, we will hear personal stories on a variety of themes. Each theme is something we could reflect upon, internalize, and take with us. We hope that this webcast will not only leave you with some interesting stories to tell, but will imbue each and every one of us with lifelong lessons.
This time of the year, as we approach Tishrei, now are my most vivid memories of the Rebbetzin.
My mother, Aleha Sholem, had a special schus that she was a first cousin to the believer Yitzchok, the husband of the Rebbetzin Chana.
After the World War, as Lubavitcher Chassidim was able to leave Russia with false documents and a lot of Mesiras Nefesh. And Rebbetzin Chana was one of us.
While being in Russia, while being in Almata, parents did not even tell us who she was because the name Schneerson was treif like Chazar. If you belonged to Schneerson, you were taken right away through the KGB. So my first meeting with her was in New York.
My grandmother is Sarah Katzenellenbogen. We call her Baba Sarah. Everybody calls her Auntie Sarah, Doda Sarah, or Muma Sarah. And she was the one that made the passports for many of the Yidden who left Russia right after World War II. And she, of course, helped Rebbetzin Chana also.
My father had a very close connection with the Rebbetzin. He was the physician by the Rebbetzin. He was a physician in the Rebbe's house in general. And occasionally he would visit the Rebbetzin and treat her in different situations.
The early part of Rebbetzin Chana's life was a very difficult one. Challenges that are unimaginable. Yet, Rebbetzin Chana did not spread the pain. Instead of sharing with people the difficulties of her life, she brought and shared joy. She brought and shared gratitude.
We were traveling from one camp to another. And finally, we were there in this camp. The place was called Walking. And there, each family was able to get a room. And at the end, they realized that Rebbetzin Chana, nobody knew that it's Rebbetzin Chana. Then she was the mechotanist of the previous Rebbe, but it was secretive, and nobody knew that she is Rebbetzin Schneerson. Somehow, she didn't have a room. And my Aunt Musi, who was alone, got a little room. So she right away said that she would share it with Rebbetzin Chana. Rebbetzin Chana was very thankful to her. It was a tiny little room, and there was only place for one little cat, army cat. So Musi gave the Rebbetzin the cat, and she was sleeping on the floor next to the cat. And this is how they were trying to accommodate themselves for a few days. And then Shabbos was coming. And Shabbos, the Rebbetzin asked my aunt, what will we do Shabbos? How will we make Shabbos? And my aunt told her right away that, you know what? My sister, she has a much bigger room than we have. And she is a very big balabosta, so she always has everything for Shabbos. And we will go to her for Shabbos. And the Rebbetzin agreed. And they came for Shabbos to us. We children were told that a very, very nice person comes to us for Shabbos, and we have to be very well behaved and to greet the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin came. They walked into the house, and right away the whole house became different. It was Shabbosdik. It was very, very, very special. And the Rebbetzin had such a nice smile. And she was very nice to us children. She noticed us and she spoke to us. And we were a little shy because those years children weren't supposed to be very outgoing. But the Rebbetzin was encouraging us that we should answer her all her questions what she was asking us, and she was very happy to be by us, and she was talking to my parents, especially to my father, and was telling him a lot of stories from her illustrious husband, and many stories from her father and from the years before when she was a young person. And she was in a very nice mood, like she wasn't talking about difficult times. When you read Rebetzin's memoirs, you can figure that this was the person who was coming then out and was so nice and relaxed and speaking to us.
When my father used to come in to her, when Levik was not here anymore, my father sang very, very well and was a very good Baltfila. So she used to tell him, Baruch, Zoganigen, not Zinganigen, but the Chassidim say Zoganigen.
Rebbetzin was a very caring person. When I came to New York, I didn't have the chance to sleep by her because the woman who took over refused to leave. She never took a day off. She loved the Rebbe, she loved the Rebbetzin, and she would not take a day off. So the only time I met the Rebbetzin is when she stood on President and Kingston Avenue. She would take a little walk and she'd stand there and she would greet everybody. She was so nonchalant, very, very friendly, very bekavadik, very regal, but very accessible. And she would ask you about your parents. She would stop me. Of course, anyone I saw the Rebbetzin, I was never in a rush. Come down, what'd you learn at school? Where are you going? How are your parents? What's going on? She really was so, she inquired about everybody, but in a very nice way. You felt like she really cared.
Everybody greeted her and everybody said goodbye, and she had this big, beautiful smile for everybody, such warmth. And she was very friendly and there for everybody.
I remember here in the United States, many times my mother, Aleh Shalom, would receive a call from the Rebbetzin Chana, and it was a lengthy, extensive call.
The Rebbetzin came to the United States, and there it was a different story. This wasn't the Rebbetzin that shared the room with my aunt and that came to us for Shabbos. This was the Rebbe's mother, and she was the queen, and she was a very, very special, elegant, intelligent lady, and she was very nice to all of us. Was very happy to host us. We should come and visit her, and this is what we did.
we came to New York to the Rebbe, and we asked the Rebbe Chana to whether we could come and visit her. She gave us an appointment whenever we could come, and we came. That was the first time I saw the Rebbe Chana. I had heard of her before, but I had never seen her before. When we came in, she had a beautifully, beautifully nice dress table with crystal and porcelain, very nicely arranged. And I remember her sitting at the side of the table. She looked really a malchusdik. Like a queen, the way she spoke, the way she asked everything about our job, about the child. And she took him in her hands like a real Bobby. She looked at him and smiled at him. This was something very, very special for us. Now that I remember, it brings tears to my eyes.
The Rebbetzin had a chair, a red chair, a velvet chair, the same as the Rebbe had downstairs, we had upstairs. We had, just like Chassidim have a Rebbe, we also at that time, when I was a child, we had a Rebbetzin. And we always waited for the Rebbetzin. We were davening, the Rebbetzin arrived, and she took her place, everything stopped. And of course we let the Rebbetzin into her place, everybody got up, and we had we were very much brought up with the concept of Malchus and of kingdom. I had a special schus that my grandmother, Rebbetzin Leah Karasik Olah Shalom, used to pick up the Rebbetzin sometimes and used to drop the Rebbetzin. My mother, Rebbetzin Temigarari, and my aunt Rivka Chitrik used to go with my grandmother, and we used to bring the Rebbetzin home, and I was walking right behind them. And these were very fond memories.
Sister Tvanya, she came into the Rebbetzin once and she saw dishes in the dish rack, so she grabbed the towel to dry them. And the Rebbetzin says, what dishes? Do you know what dishes you're drying? And she said, yes, they look like they're fleishike dishes. The Rebbetzin said, yes, but what towel do you have here? And she says, oh, I took a towel. She says, what color is your towel? And she said, my towel is blue. The Rebbetzin said, it's accepted amongst Jewish women that blue is for milchiks and red is for fleishiks. So when you go to different homes, you don't make any mistakes and you can keep kosher. So now we all have blue for milchiks and anything near blue for milchiks and red or pink or whatever for fleishiks.
When my oldest son was born, Levi Yitzchok, unique.
There are many ways in which we see that the Rebbe put the lives of the Hasidim first. The Rebbe gave himself totally to the Hasidim. One anecdote that comes to mind is that at a certain point, the Rebbe wasn't sleeping enough, and the Hasidim asked one of the elder Hasidim to approach the Rebbe and ask the Rebbe to take care of his health. And when that Chassid approached the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe about sleeping more, the Rebbe said, how can I sleep when, and the Rebbe named a certain Chassid is struggling, when different Hasidim have challenges, how could I sleep? The Rebbe put Hasidim before his own health. The Rebbe gave of his precious time and so on to the Hasidim. The Rebbe told us that his mission in life is to dedicate himself completely to the Hasidim. And so too, when we look at the life and the legacy of Rebbetzin Chana, we see that the Rebbetzin Chana placed the lives of the people that she came in contact with ahead of her own.
We all know that Rebbetzin Chana went in through very, very strong Mesiras Nefesh to provide ink for her husband, for the Leivik, the Rebbe's father. He should be able to write his Chidushim. She used to go, we know that grass, she cooked it, well, whatever she did, she made ink out of it. in order he should be able to write it. And when she came here, she said that she hopes that when all the Ksovim came in, she said that she hopes that the Rebbe will be able to publish everything that her husband wrote. And we know that he did it. And this was a big, really very strong Mesiras Nefesh from her to do that.
Rebbe Leibel Mochkin came over to my grandmother, Baba Sarah, and said to her, we have to get Rebbe Tzachana out of Russia quickly because she wants to go see her son, who was the Rebbe. At that time, he wasn't the Rebbe yet. He was the son-in-law of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And she really would like to go see him. The problem is she wants to go under her name Schneerson. Now, those of you who know the stories of Russia, the name Schneerson was a death threat. That's it. The minute they knew anybody was connected to the Rebbeim, who of course disseminated lots of Yiddishkeit, which was against the constitution of communism. So they imprisoned them, and most of them never were killed, which happened to my grandparents and to my husband's parents. So my grandmother, Baba Sarah, who is very articulate and very, very smart, went to Rebbe Tzachana's house, knocked on the door, and came in. She was in Moscow at that time, and said to her, Rebbetzin, I hear you want to go to America, so I would like to get you out of Russia, and I have a passport for you, and I'd like you to come with me. So Rebbe Tzachana said to my grandmother, yes, I want to go, but I'm going to go under my name, Chana Schneerson. So my grandmother was a little bit really upset, and she says, Rebbetzin, you cannot go under your name. It's a death threat. You just can't go. So Rebbe Tzachana said to my grandmother, in my Leben habe ich nicht gesagt kein Liegen. I've never in my life told a lie. And I don't plan to tell a lie now either. So I will go under my name. Meanwhile, my grandmother was thinking what to do, and then there was a knock on the door. Two young women walked in. One was called Yocheved, and the other was called Hadassah. Hadassah Perman and Yocheved Zalmanov were cousins of my parents. Their father, Chaim Meir, and my grandmother, Babi Mayasha, were brothers and sisters. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, we found out later, told them that they should go into the Kremlin and they should be like the people that will see what's going on there, and like kind of spies for the Rebbe, to save many Lubavitcher lives, which they did. I know my mother said, who's a cousin to them, said, Yocheved, Hadassah, they took you in the Kremlin, they know you're Yidden, they'll finish with you, you'll become a head shorter. They're not going to need you more. What are you doing in the Kremlin? Why are you working for them? But they didn't tell us. We found out this later, that the Frierdiker Rebbe had actually told them to infiltrate the Kremlin. So they came knocking on the door and telling Rebbe Tzachana, it's time to go. And Rebbe Tzachana at that time was kind of, I don't want to say arguing, but debating with my Baba about the name. So they said, Rebbetzin, we would like to escort you to the train station. And Rebbe Tzachana, who was the most incredible, caring, such a sweet, really wonderful, warm person, said, if two young girls want to come and take an old lady to the train station, I will go. And so they walked her out to the train station, and my grandmother said to her, Rebbetzin, I'm going to put a babushka on you. Just sit down on the train and don't say anything. Just go to sleep. Don't tell the truth and don't tell a lie. Don't say anything at all. I'll take care of everything. And if you know the trains in Russia, they have 3 compartments. So my grandmother bought a ticket in first class. First class has little tables where you can either play cards or dominoes or checkers. And my grandmother sat Rebbe Tzachana on the bench, and she sat on the table with 3 other men. This story we heard from Rebbe Tzachana, we didn't know it. When my father, Shalom, used to go visit Rebbe Tzachana, because they knew each other from this trip, she told her this story. She said like this, I thought your mother, Sarah, went off the derech. She went crazy. What is she sitting with 3 goyim, playing checkers? What does she need it for? A woman like Sarah, who's done so many mitzvahs, what is she doing there? But then, she saved my life. the conductor came in and he said, tickets, tickets. So everybody showed the ticket, including my Baba Sarah. And then he went over to Rebbe Tzachana, who had this big babushka. She looked older than she was. Because of her sorrow, she never looked old anyway. But here she really looked like a very old lady. And he said, you, what's your name? And my Baba jumped out of her seat and ran over and said, oh, leave her alone. She's an old lady. She's sick. I have her ticket. I have her card. I have her passport. I have everything. I'll give it to you. He said, no, I want her to tell me. So the three men at the table jumped up and said, don't you see we're in the middle of a game? Look, this is so exciting. We're going to forget our cards. We're going to forget our numbers. We'll forget our dominoes. We're going to forget where we're up to. Just take the stupid passport and take the stupid picture and take the ticket and let her go. That's exactly what happened. The conductor said, okay. And he took the ticket and he let her pass. This is what Rebbe Tzachana said. I see that your mother, Baba Sarah, he said to my husband, your mother, is given Aisha Chachama, a very, very smart woman.
The Rebbetzin Chana once told my father that she asked the Rebbe how come he doesn't go out sometimes to leave the city for fresh air. So the Rebbe said that he was yesterday outside the city. Actually, it was by the ale. He was on the field. So this was basically his way of leaving town, going out of the city, was basically the being in the field.
She used to go out from her apartment and walk around on Kingston. And I was passing by, and I stopped and talked to the Rebbetzin, and the Rebbetzin looked across the Kingston Avenue, and there was young people passing by, and the Rebbetzin said, with so much love, the Rebbetzin said, "Sie seien glücklich, dem Sohn sporlich." That she called us dem Sohn sporlich, that we are her son's couples. So that she was very proud and happy, and she considered us her children.
I remember, together with many children in Crown Heights, when the Rebbetzin Chana would come to daven in 770 on Yom Tov, then when she would leave from Ezras Noshim, she would go into the Rebbe's room, and then the Rebbe would walk out with her. She walked out of the main entrance of 770, and then the Rebbe would stand at the door with his tallis, and he would follow with his eyes his mother until she went till Kingston Avenue.
And the Rebbetzin would stop and speak with people while she was walking through. She was very friendly with people, very social, and she would greet them.
And then she made a right on Kingston Avenue, and he would follow his mother with so much love with his eyes until he was no longer able to see her. And what it showed all the children was the tremendous kibbud aim that the Rebbe gave his mother.
She told us that the Rebbe comes every single day. We all know his kibbud aim. He comes every single day to visit her, between a few minutes between all his hard work that he was dealing with. Rebbetzin Chana was left afterwards on her own, and she used to come to my mother, to our house, to my mother, just to have a schmooze with her. And once she heard my father, Baruch Shifrin, singing a nigun, she said, "Oh, what a beautiful song, mit hearts. I wish my husband, Olav Sholem, would be able to hear it."
She was talking about the Rebbe and the nachas that she have and all those Verbringen and everything.
I remember many times the Rebbetzin would say with a smile, "Ich bin nicht nur a bas Talmid Chochem, ich bin necha neishes chovel." I'm not only the daughter of a Talmid Chochem, I'm the wife of a Talmid Chochem. But she said it in the Talmudic terminology. Ich bin nicht nur a bas Talmid Chochem, ich bin eich Anishes Chovel.
Mrs. Edith Block would walk her into shul, how everybody would turn around, and the Rebbetzin would walk into shul, and the first thing she would do is she would look down at the Rebbe, and then she would turn around with a huge smile, ear to ear, shepping really nachas of her son, the Rebbe. We are just so fortunate to have such an incredible Rebbetzin who gave us such a Rebbe that, I don't know, he was just one of a kind. I've never known any other Rebbes, and I don't think I'll ever know anybody like our Rebbe. And she definitely deserved the Rebbe, and the Rebbe definitely deserved the Rebbetzin.
Mitzvah Shabbos, after Havdalah, she would put on all the lights in the house. He didn't hear any explanation for it, but basically it was, as far as we can understand, it was to begin the house in the week on a positive note, in a positive manner, as we say it in the Havdalah.
My parents had at that time 3 children. I was the baby, I was 8 months old. And my grandmother found a passport, and here's what happened. Because of the war, Russia and Poland made a pact that all the Russian people can go back to Russia, and all the Polish people who were in Russia can go back to Poland. Now, because they bombed so many cities in Poland, they didn't have any way to verify if the passports were right. So people who had passports of their families, they would take the passport and they would sell them. And my grandmother, Baba Sora, would buy them. And she bought a passport that said, a grandmother, a father, a mother, and 6 children. So the grandmother was Rebbe Tzachana, the father and mother were my parents, and the 6 children, there were 3 of us. The other 3 they took out of an orphanage. My grandmother Sarah paid a lot of money to get them out of the orphanage. It was 1 girl and 2 boys, and they were attached as our parents' children. So here's my father, mother, 6 children, and Rebbe Tzachana is the grandmother going all out of Russia to Peking. Now, my Baba Sarah said to my father, "She's a chasheve froi," which means she's a very important lady. Treat her the way you would treat somebody very important. They didn't know that the Rebbe would become Rebbe, but they did know that the Rebbe was the son-in-law of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And so they had 1 pillow and 1 blanket, because you could not schlep anything when you ran away. And they gave the pillow and the blanket to Rebbe Tzachana. My mother remembers that she was a very kind woman. She tried very hard to stay out of the way, but it was very freezing. It wasn't a first-class car. It was a cattle car, and it was very, very cold. But they did take care of the Rebbetzin as much as they could. And when they arrived in Peking, they came into what's called a barracks, where the soldiers would stay. And Rebbe Tzachana was given a barrack, and Musa Nimotin was asked to take care of her. She never had lost her family. And so she took care of the Rebbetzin, but my father would go every single day. He would chop wood to warm up the barrack.
I remember I was a child in Paris, and the Rebbetzin Chana stayed in our house in 1947. And there was a room that she had for 3 months. The Rebbe would visit the Rebbetzin Chana twice every single day in our apartment. And many times my mother, Allah Shalom, would give him a glass of tea and sometimes cake in our dining room. And that room, for the balance of the 7 years that we were in Paris, was called the Rebbetzin Chana's Zimmer, the Rebbetzin Chana's room.
Every time we walked in, we were given the greatest covet, as if we were adults, as if we were very special people, we were mere children. So the memory of her just being so friendly and caring and thinking that I was important really left a very, very great impression on me.
Another time, my sister was sitting in the house, and she was just sitting on a chair. And the Rebbetzin said, "Look behind you." And she turned around, there was a picture of the Rebbe. And she said, "It's not bekovedik, it's not respectful that you should sit with your back to a Rebbe." So we try very hard, wherever we are in the house, that the pictures of the Rebbe is in a way where we don't have to sit with our back to the Rebbe. Even when I go to the oil, I make sure that I do not sit with my back to the Rebbe, not by the video and not by the picture.
I remember hearing later that when he was sitting Shiva, after his brother, and he didn't want his mother to know, he had his sneakers, those years, sneakers were only white, and his mother would notice that he wasn't wearing his regular shoes. He had them painted black, so that she wouldn't, when he went to visit her, he left Shiva house, and he went there to visit his mother, so she would never find out that his brother passed away.
When my mother passed away, Chai Odel Tovshin Chof, Rebbetzin Chana came to pay a shiva call and stayed a long time, like it was a personal loss to her. The Rebbe came, the Rebbetzin came, the Rebbetzin Chana made us feel that this was a personal loss.
I got married in France, and to my wedding, I received, at my great surprise to our wedding, I received a telegram from Rebbetzin Chana wishing us a mazel tov for the wedding.
Mrs. Tildashevsky was one of her shoppers. She used to buy things for her very often. And because it wasn't so easy like now that you could buy everything on the line. So you had to go and buy things, and the Rebbetzin liked certain things, and then we would bring it, and then we had to change it or whatever. But the Rebbetzin used to pay her with a check, and the check was a joint account with the Rebbe, and it was signed by the Rebbe. So once she gave her a check, and she told her, but you deposit it, because I know you people, that you want to keep this Rebbe's signature, so you are not going to deposit the check. So the Rebbetzin asked her told her that would deposit the check.
Once, I had a schus. She showed me a pair of boots, and she said that she has trouble because elderly people, sometimes one of the bones perturbs a little bit, and therefore there's pressure on the boot. So she gives me the boot, and she says, find a way that we should be able to take care of that. I was a kid, young man, so I took the pair of boots. I took them to a shoemaker that was at that time on Albany Avenue between Union and President. You have to cross Albany. That building no longer exists, but there was a shoemaker, a Jewish shoemaker there. And I told him exactly what he should do. And he listened. And I told him that this is very important. Anyway, he listened, and he really did. He carved out, and he did exactly what we asked. I brought it back to the Rebbetzin. She said, wait a minute. She went into the other room, and she put on the boots. And then she came out with a big smile, and she said, in her characteristic Yiddish, Zeer git and zeer bakvein. Very good and very comfortable.
When the Rebbetzin came to America, she had a woman who slept with her. They did not leave her alone. Whenever the woman took off or went on vacation or went to her children, people would sleep there. So my sisters had the schus to be there. My older sister, Esther Alper, Novashal, she was there as a single girl. And at that time, the Rebbe was Rebbe. The Rebbe had asked that they should make a parade on Lag BaOmer. And of course, they chose Esther Kazen, or then she was called Katzenellenbogman, to run the parade. And this story we heard from Rebbetzin Chana, who told the story to my mother. She said, your daughter is just the most incredible person, organized, synesthetic. She had to run the parade, so she said, Rebbetzin, can I please use your phone? There were no cell phones, and there was only one phone in the whole house. And she gave her permission, and she said, I was listening to the way. She had to speak to Bahrain because they had to run the program for the boys. She had to get buses, she had to get food, she had to put everything together. Such an organized person, such a tzniusdik way. She says, I was so impressed, I even told my son, which of course was the Rebbe.
And she got all this coverage from the entire, the hundreds or thousands, of people that had come to daven with the Rebbe, that came from all over the world, that came to the Rebbe. They all gave her the coverage of waiting until she left, watching, following the Rebbe's and waiting until she left. And which was very, very beautiful.
One of the ladies was visiting here, and she was from France. She used to organize Mlava Malkus in Paris. She came to the Rebbetzin to say goodbye, and she said, Rebbetzin, what should I tell my ladies when I come back? What kind of regards I should bring from here, from the Rebbe? So the Rebbetzin told her, I was standing by a Verbrengen. There was next to me two Israeli girls, and they spoke Hebrew, modern Hebrew, and I understand modern Hebrew. One of them wanted to leave, and the other one didn't want to leave, so she was telling her, come, let's go, and she said, and the other one answered her, so she said, what are you standing here? You can't hear and you can't see. So she answered her, I can't hear and I can't see, but I can't leave. So this is, the Rebbetzin said, what you should tell your ladies, that here we not always could hear and could see, but we could never leave.
My father used to just go out of the driveway and drive her home.
Zeer gut and zeer bequem. Very good and very comfortable.
It is an honor to be part of this webcast brought to you by Machen Chana, the Mossad that carries Rebbetzin Chana's name. The Rebbe once expressed that if someone accuses me of being partial about Machen Chana, they should know that indeed it is true because it is on my mother's name. The Rebbe visited Machen Chana. The Rebbe treated Machen Chana as more than just a Mossad, but as something personal. As a Mossad that was a personal tribute to the Rebbe's mother. The Rebbe sent his own Sfarim to be held in Machen Chana, and the Rebbe's overall care and concern for the livelihood, for the Hatzlacha, for the success of the learning and the Midas Tovis of the students is something that the Rebbe took personal care in and saw this as a tribute to his mother.
Machen Chana has a schus. I don't know if it was the first Mossad named after the Rebbetzin. I don't think it was, but it was the one in New York and the one that the Rebbe chose to name after his mother and to be her legacy. We know that Rebbetzin Chana was into Balei Tshuva, and she used to do an awful lot in the Inyan of Tshuva, and the yard site was Rebbe Tzeres Yemei Tshuva. It was the Rebbe's 70th birthday, and the Rebbe announced Yud Aleph Nisan. He would like, as a birthday present, he would like 70 meisters to be created, and that would be his gift. I say sitting by the Farbrengen, I decided that I'm going to ask the Rebbe, even though I was a little embarrassed at the time, I'm going to write a letter to the Rebbe and ask whether or not a Mossad for women coming back to Tshuva, wanting to learn later in their life, who didn't have a chance to learn when they were younger, would be an appropriate Mossad to be one of these 70 meisters. I had at that time been teaching for half a year in my house, a group of women who were just amazingly going from one end to the other. They hadn't been keeping anything, and all of a sudden, slowly they became Balei Tshuva, and I just noticed the great need and the thirst they had for chassidus and whenever they learned halacha, immediately to think for women. Women were thirsty. They were coming to Crown Heights. Some of them were coming from India. Some of them were hitchhiking around the United States. They were looking for some kind of guru, some kind of answer, and some kind of truth. They wanted to see what the chassidim were like. There was a great need at this time for this education. I wrote the Rebbe. It took a while for me to put the letter together, and the Rebbe's answer was an amazing answer that I got early in the summer. The answer was, Mossad ke'ein zeh, achrayusai v'ulai gam chashivusai yesh asher lebanim. That the responsibility and perhaps the importance of a Mossad like this was even greater than that for men. And the Rebbe at that point started giving the first haras, and over the years the Rebbe gave many, many haras of how he wanted this Mossad to be run. And at that point what he said was we should check chavrusas heitev, who's going to sleep with who's going to learn with who, which homes people are going to. And it's a cloud for Moistus, the importance of the Nahalim to really check what's going on and be responsible for all the people that, and part of the chinuch was who they would meet, who the interactions were with. We started the Mossad, and we asked the Rebbe whether or not we could have the schus of calling the Mossad after the Rebbe's mother. There was no Mossad in Crown Heights after the Rebbe's Chana, even though it was so many years since then. And the Rebbe's answer was to wait a little bit until it's established. 2 months later, we asked the Rebbe whether we can call it Chana, Beis Chana, or Machon Chana, and the Rebbe chose Machon Chana. The simcha was undescribable, and everybody wanted to teach in this Ma'aseh. That was a Ma'aseh that the Rebbe chose to name after the Rebbetzin, and he chose the name. The Rebbe explained to us, first of all, the importance of this Ma'aseh. The Rebbe wanted that everything that had to do with Machon Chana should be very beautiful. The Rebbe explained to us, first of all, the importance of this Ma'aseh, that it was even greater than men, because the women are the cornerstone of the home, and when a woman is from, then her kids will be from, and she will have influence on her husband. Baruch Hashem, there are tens of thousands of Machon Chana girls today who are very, very proud of being Reb Tzachana's daughters, and hopefully Reb Tzachana is very proud of them. There are also hundreds of people that had the schus throughout the years to be part of this Ma'aseh, to help grow this Ma'aseh, the Ruchnius and the Gashmius, and each one of us feels very, very indebted to the Rebbe and to the Rebbetzin for the schus of being part of such a holy work. Machon Chana was the first Baal Tshuva in Chabad, the Baal Tshuva Yeshiva in Chabad. The Rebbe did not want it to be called Baal Tshuva, people that were returnees, people that were on the journey, and many Maistas followed suit, Baruch Hashem. So today there's not only a Machon Chana, but there's many others that are doing this beautiful work, are being makar of so many people, and their children today are filling up yeshivas throughout the world, in every single continent, in every single country. Many of our alumni today are shluchim themselves, and the amount of mitzvahs, the amount of candles, the amount of film, the amount of mitzvahs that are being done today by the people that they were makarav, it's tefeach hamalach latfiach, which is just unbelievable. And so Rebbe Tzachana has an awful lot of, like I say, children today, and we're all very, very proud of the fact that we had the schus to be part and have the schus. The Rebbe should give us keches, which we should do and so much more. The Rebbe wanted in Gorag Fanem. The Rebbe saw Machon Chana to be a Ma'aseh that needed to be like the Harvard of the Jewish world, the place for everything Jewish, for every single Jewish woman. And in Mirz Hashem, it should be occurring very, very soon. The scholars of the Rebbe.
It is our hope that you will be able to take some of the messages of today's webcast, internalize them in your own life, instill some of those values, some of the gratitude, some of the respect, some of the simcha that Rebbetzin Chana personified, and you share that with your environment. And may our increased Avodas Hashem, may our increased acts of goodness and kindness in the Lashon of the Rebbe illuminate the world and help bring about the revelation of his Galus Melech HaMashiach immediately now. Amen.
Good morning. I am Esther Wien, but I don't know about the Wonder Woman thing. I guess they got carried away a little bit.